at the
course
lighting.
not.
Yeah, he looked at the lighting and said, "Ooh, he's not ready."
I looked at my face and realized I'm not ready. Got a
So,
face for radio.
yeah, I may not even edit that out. That's going to be great.
Cool.
Seriously. So here we are in the Sharpening Iron podcast for those of you who are listening, and it's me, Randy, and today we've got John, Brother John,
Mhm.
and we're talking about today. There's been a lot of talk in the news lately about the government food assistance programs, and we had the government shutdown, and we had all these people online discussing the government food assistance and other, quite honestly, government assistance programs. And it's my contention that that whole thing is a very shameful reproach on the church.
Yeah.
With as many people in the country of the United States claiming to be Christian and claiming to exemplify Christian ethics and values and uphold the things that we think or claim to be uh, aspects of our Christianity. One of those things is charitable contribution and giving into um, society. And I think that we have become very complacent in that. I think that a lot of us have grown so used to the um, taxes and the redistribution and use of our tax dollars into social programs that we have neglected those same social programs within the church.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what's happened. Too often here, especially in the United States, we become reliant on the government to do things for us that we were doing just fine on our own. And it seems to be that every time the government inserts itself into another program and another program and another program, those programs from the private sector tend to dry up because, I mean, let's face it, there are a limited amount of resources. But the question comes is, can the government do it more efficiently? The private sector can. And honestly, I have yet to find a single government organization, with the exception of probably the military, that can actually function more efficiently in the government sector than they could in the private sector. I haven't seen that, especially when it comes to those SNAP programs that they've been arguing about, all of the different entitlement programs or EBT situations. And unfortunately, a lot of that's riddled with waste. Became this outcry for a while that the churches weren't doing enough. And I'm not sure that it was that the churches weren't doing enough as it was that people were requesting more than the church was giving. And an evidence of that is there are counties here in Tennessee that actually have a county organization that comes together, and each church records how much money they give to each individual person or family through their assistance programs, such as helping them out with rent, helping them out with utility bills, helping them out with food and those kind of things. And when they start seeing the same name coming into that organization from every single church, because you have those people that abuse the system, right? Same thing is happening in the government system where they're abusing that. They're getting these checks, they're getting EBT stuff, and people are taking those EBTs and saying, "Hey, go use my EBT card, buy yourself some groceries, and come back and give me some cash for it. And whatever you spend, I'll give you half that in cash, or you give me half that in cash. That way, you're getting 50% off your groceries, and I'm getting some cash to go spend on other things." Because some of the people don't really need it. They don't need the food. And granted, yes, there are some that do. There are quite a few that really do need those programs. Um, but I feel like those programs themselves are evidence that we as a church, as a people, as the body of Christ, have failed in our mission of helping to provide for the needy and helping provide for the poor.
Well, and I agree with you. I think that's very true. But I think a lot of the part of the problem is that we have um, it goes far beyond. Number one, people are asking for more than they need. They're asking for what they want, and
Yes,
that's
exactly.
one
That's the
problem.
word.
Is
That's the right word.
there's a difference between want and need, and that needs to be addressed.
Mm-hmm.
But it goes far beyond the abuse of the system, because also you touched on how efficiently and effectively we can do things,
Mm-hmm.
and anything that becomes tied down with more and more bureaucry
Bureaucracy. Yep.
gets bogged down.
It does. That costs a fortune just to be able to manage the programs. Whereas from a private sector, from a church program side of things, a lot of those jobs are being filled by people that volunteer their time to do it, not ones that are getting paid to do it on top of all of that. So yeah, that absolutely compounds the cost and the inefficiency of the government stepping in to do these social programs.
And the same thing can be said if churches get overly bureaucratic in their benevolence and their acts of charitable contributions, um, because my mother used to say, too many cooks spoil the soup.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yep.
and that kind of thing is not as bad within the church, because there aren't as many channels and there aren't as many people trying to disseminate it. But in the government world, every one of those steps of bureaucracy sets someone who is in a government job getting paid, and those payments are coming from our tax dollars, which further reduce the amount of tax dollars able to actually go to the final person, because there's only so much tax dollars we can use, and Americans already feel overburdened by taxation already. And so a lot of people call it a catch-22, in that, well, I'm already so burdened by my taxation that I personally don't have enough left to contribute into clothing ministries and food ministries and things that are going into the church. And that's something I also disagree with, especially when I see so many people enjoying wants above
Mm-hmm.
needs, because greed is on both sides. Those people, and for terms of this conversation, we'll call them the haves and the have-nots,
Mm-hmm.
or those in need and those that providers and needers, or whatever. So you have these have-nots who are maybe are on government assistance and things like that, and they have needs and they have wants, and they're to the point of frustration with life in general, that they want a few of their wants. They don't just want their needs met, they want their wants. But
Mm-hmm.
the wants should be your responsibility, not someone else's.
Yeah,
If
and
you
that's kind of
need if you need something, if you need it and you can't get it, then just a sense of decency, whether you're Christian or not, should say, hey, I'm going to help this person get it because they need it. But if you want it, I've always told, if you want something bad enough, you'll get it. Um, and
right.
and I think that holds true. I think that, you know, if I need a form of communication, or if I need a TV in my home to stay up to date with news and to be able to watch the weather so I can be advised if there's a storm coming or a tornado or this, that, and the other. And you say, I kind of need that. Okay, well, a basic TV is all I need. I don't
Mhm.
need a 75-inch widescreen, super smart TV, that'll compute my
Yep.
taxes and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of the point I'm getting at here.
Yeah, and I kind of accidentally wore this shirt and didn't realize it until you were just telling about this, about, this. I never said that, Jesus. Of course, he never said that. but he also never said he was going to provide for every one of your wants either. You know, the
Right.
words need is the correct term, not want. So yeah, I'm 100% following you on that. Now you mentioned something about the church hierarchy. Um, one of the things I do, of course, is I have a consulting company where I do stewardship audits with churches, and I work with them about how they're spending their money and how they're managing their money and what they're doing. And I will tell you, it's very interesting to see there are churches out there that they literally exist just to pay their bills. There are not a whole lot of charitable contributions going on. There are some where 50% of the money they bring in from tithes and offerings go to pay their staff. And what does that leave for the community, for helping the community with? It's not as much as you would think. And unfortunately, when all this came down, there were several preachers that were very vocal online about and literally stating the church cannot provide for all these people. We just don't have the resources to do it. And then I look at those same people that are saying that, and I start looking at, well, how much money are they making at the church that they're at, and what is their church contributing to that community? And then it's kind of heartbreaking to see some of
If
the
you see
amounts
a
of money
pastor,
that's going out. And it's, yeah,
and there are some pastors that are making near six figures.
there absolutely are. Matter of fact, there's several that I personally know that are making more than that make very good money. And I look at the total income for the congregation, and I got to scratch my head and go, "Wow, that's it doesn't look good on paper." Now, those pastors could be giving 90% of what they get to charity. I don't know. That's not for me to judge and say, but I do say that when it comes to managing the funds of that organization of the church, not the whole body as a people, but that kind of brings into question how they're managing those funds. Are they really doing this the most efficient way? So
You bleeped out a little bit there. Can you restate what you just said? Because my computer lagged and I want to make sure it's recorded.
yeah, just making sure that knowing that I have actually seen the books of churches where pastors make six figures and above. And I don't know personally if those pastors are, they could be giving 90% of their income for all I know to charitable organizations. I don't know that. It's not up for me to judge that. However, it does bring into question the organization itself and how they're managing the money. If that person is able to give 90%, why do they need that much money to be able to manage personally on their own? Couldn't that church have the resources to help the community more if they were paying their staff? There are churches here in where we are in Middle Tennessee that bring in multi-millions of dollars. And when you look at their books, they're literally paying out multi-millions of dollars to staff. Some have 6, 7, 8 pastors on staff, plus youth ministry, plus every ministry staff person you can imagine, and are literally paying millions to staff some of these organizations. And you got to stop and think, man, do each of these pastors, I mean, it kind of brings into question, where are our resources going? And it's
Well, and you,
interesting that a lot of these organizations, they're paying out 80-90% of their total expenditures for staff. What are they really doing?
and you're touching, whether you realize it or not, you're actually touching on a lot of different problems within the
Mm-hmm.
structure of churches.
And that
One of
mimics
those things,
government. Like you were talking about the
yes,
inefficiencies of government and the bureaucracy. When you start creating that within a church organization, it becomes the most weighty thing, and it makes it so inefficient.
and we can start talking about the fracturing of denominationalism within the confines of the greater Christian church. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we live in an area here in the middle part of Tennessee where, it's the buckle of the Bible Belt.
Yeah, it
Um,
is.
literally, um, there are more churches per capita than any other place in the United States here. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you can stand, I can go where I work, and directly across the street from where I work are two churches separated by a
Mm-hmm.
laundromat, church, laundromat, church. Um, and that's, not even one block of one street, and there are literally hundreds of churches. And I live in a relatively small community, medium sized, I'd say maybe. But so you do have larger congregation churches and smaller congregation churches. That if some of these churches would pool their resources, um, uh, and combine themselves, you'd see churches that number one would have a larger group overall because they'd be combined. They could do away with multiple buildings and have enough resources to have one larger, better sanctuary
Hmm.
and building and structure and classrooms and all that. Still be able to afford to pay the staffing there a livable, earnable wage for the work that they do, and workman is worth his wages, the Bible says,
Hmm.
and still um, um, increase the amount of benevolence that they could give. But what we have is this. Um, in some cases, now I won't just blanket statement this, but we have a stubborn tenacity to cling to um, churches and congregations that literally are dying and would be better served if well, there's only 18 people that come to this church every Sunday. And it takes everything that we make just to be able to pay for the lights and the water and mortgage
Hmm.
and whatever. Well, wouldn't it be far better served and be better stewards of what is coming in amongst that group to say, let's combine our group with this church down the road and let's combine our resources and let's improve that. And for whatever reason, we don't do that. Maybe it's tradition. Maybe it's just comfort. We don't like to be uncomfortable. Well, I mean, Jesus didn't come to make us comfortable. He came to shake things up quite literally
Hmm.
from the top to the bottom. Um, and
And a
sometimes
lot
I
of
think
that
we
that you're
forget
talking
that.
about is exactly what you said is tradition driven. This is the way we've always done it. That church down the street don't do it the way we do. So it becomes very difficult when you start talking about the different denominations and how just the little things divide us. And that's really not a good thing when we let those little things divide us when salvation's really our common goal. We should be focused on our common goals and not the little things that divide us.
Right.
And that eats into all of those resources.
Right. And the thing that has confounded me the most is when you go to these churches, okay, you'll have these churches. Well, I'm not so sure that we should have communion every Sunday. Maybe we should do it
Mhm.
once a month, or maybe we should do it bi-weekly or whatever. And I'm just using that as an
Mhm.
example. Or insert whatever problem here. Well, I don't know about the difference between immersion and sprinkling. I think you ought to be dunked. And some say, no, you can pour, you can sprinkle, and that's a valid form of baptism and everything. And you have all these little differences, and they get so clung to that they miss the greater part of what Jesus's command was to go and make disciples of all nations. I want to focus on this all nations
All
part
nations.
of that directive. If you take that to heart and you understand what that should look like, the Christian church should be one of the most diverse places on the planet.
Mhm.
Because if we are literally discipling and making disciples of all nations, all tongues, all tribes, all then all should be welcome. Okay. And you should see multi ethnicity, you should see multi age, you should see from newborns up to you know too old to make it, or whatever. I can't make it to church because I'm just so old that I tune in and view because it's just harder on my body and all blah 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 blah. And you should see everything in between, all participating in whatever way they can, all active in whatever way in suiting their capacity. And yet more and more you find less and less of that. You go to house
Mhm.
of worship. We have black churches and white churches, and why are we segregating ourselves?
Yeah, I was going to say that exact thing because we had a
I mean, it's
congregation
not
member.
even a mandate. It's not like, well, we have, old laws that used to have segregational laws, and none of that's active anymore. And
Mm-mm.
yet we
Was-
seek our own to a
mhm,
degree, whether it be our own in mindset or our own demographic, or I don't like those loud and rowdy churches, and well, that quiet worship is just a little too subtle for me. I like something more dynamic. Why is that the issue
yeah, good
more than
question.
the
Yeah,
worship itself? I mean,
yeah,
I
whether it be
don't
the music
personally,
or
I
the
don't
people
care.
that are there. Yeah.
I
Mhm,
don't care how you worship. I don't care if you're one of these that you want to prayerfully just sit there, and in reverence. That's fine. And
mhm,
if you want to dance in the aisles, and that's fine too. I really don't care. And if you're offended by somebody else's worship, you need to question yourself, because they're worshiping.
mhm.
You should be thankful that they're worshiping in whatever way that they are, rather than be offended by how they're doing it.
Yeah, 100%.
And
100%.
and and we have this problem that we don't check ourselves in that regard, and we don't educate ourselves in that regard. We cling to what's familiar, and we've lost the edge that Jesus walked with. Jesus was an edgy guy,
Mm,
and that's part of what drew us
mhm,
to him to begin with, was he was so edgy. And
mhm.
we need that back. We need that edginess back.
Yep. I think you really hit the nail on the head when you talked about that we're clinging to the familiar. We cling to that familiar, and
I mean,
that's not what Jesus did at all. He flipped tables and he upended social mores. He did pretty much everything that culture says we should do, and that humanity says this is how we do it. He didn't, because he wasn't. He was fully human, but he was also fully God, and that's where the big difference came in, and that's what he was trying to show us, is that this is not the way. We need to be more like God, more like Jesus. We need to follow him. And how many times do we really don't. We really don't. We take the path of least resistance, which brings us back full circle to that government social programs thing. It's easier for to let the government do it. It's a hard thing to take care of your community. It's a
well,
hard thing to get out and do the work.
and,
So
and it's
that
so,
path of
but it's
least
so sad.
resistance, it is
It's
sad.
so sad, because the truth is, if we were to take an active stance collectively as the church, I am thoroughly convinced that we could do it more effectively, more efficiently, and quite frankly, better.
I know we could, 100% know we could. Yeah.
And while doing it, here's also a difference that maybe I want to discuss, is that a lot of these social programs that I'm familiar with have no impetus for betterment.
Mhm.
What I mean by that is, oh, you're in need. Well, we'll just give you what you need, and we're not giving you anything to get you past the need.
It's a
So that,
handout, not a hand up,
yeah, you can
essentially.
say it
Mhm.
like that. It's perfect. Yeah. And so, whereas if the church is truly living up to the directives and the ideals of the church, we're not only assisting those who are in need, but we're also giving them the tools, the equipment, the education, the knowledge, um,
Mhm.
to get beyond that need, so that they're no longer in need.
Yep. Yep.
And a
Yeah.
lot of those, and I can hear certain counter arguments. Well, what about those people who can't? What about folks that are in wheelchairs? And what
Mhm.
about folks that just, there are always going to be some people that have some form of need. I'm not talking about not meeting
Mhm.
needs. You go
Even
back to the
Jesus
original.
said that the poor will always be there.
You're going back to the original argument. I never said
Mhm.
let's not meet needs.
Yeah.
Okay. What I said is, let's find the needs when we identify them. Let's look and see, what needs can we meet for this person, and what
Mhm.
needs can we help them meet for themselves, and let's do that. Now, of
Mhm.
course, I do realize that you're going to encounter certain personalities that honestly are either lazy, they don't want to better themselves. They want it done for them. They
Mm-hmm.
have, very little personal drive. Those kind of people exist. They're out there. They never try anything new. They never try anything different. They're okay with the same old status quo as long as it's being provided for them. That okay,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, they'll still be there.
Yep. It will
And
always be there.
but that does not absolve us of endeavoring to try and endeavoring constantly to give them the opportunity to be better and give them an opportunity to change, to grow, to improve. That doesn't absolve us of that at all. So just stating that, well, what about those people? They're there and they need help. Okay, I'm not saying not help them, but I'm also saying that we need to continue to help to try to better them, whether they receive it or not. We should never stop offering it. And
Yep.
we should never let somebody else take our place.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what we've done.
Yeah.
And
And it's not even because we can't. It's because it was that path of least resistance. Is they're going to do it for us, though. Therefore, let them
I
go.
even I even brought up for those churches that do have the capacity to have and maintain. Some churches, I've seen some churches that are nothing more than a one room building. That you have the sanctuary, and then off to the sides you have restrooms, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
that's fine. They don't have the ability to warehouse food. They don't have the ability to warehouse clothing. They don't have all of those things that we think. But for those churches that do have that space and that capacity, what would happen if starting this coming day of worship, whether it's a Saturday or Sunday, and I'll speak to the 7-day Adventists or anybody,
Mm-hmm.
what happened if you instilled such a sense of I want to be part of the solution, that mindset, the solution
Mm-hmm.
mindset in the congregation, that every time they went to the grocery store during the week to pick up their groceries, they spend an extra dollar or two. It wouldn't take much
Mm-hmm.
to buy one or two extra items that are shelf stable.
Mm-hmm.
And you start bringing those in the quantity of whatever your church congregation is every single week. Every time they
Mm-hmm.
open the door, I'm going to bring another can of soup, or I'm going to bring another box of this or that or whatever. And if we have freezer capacity, then I'm going to bring things that can be frozen
Mm-hmm.
and be stable for even longer periods. And you start pretty soon. If everybody started doing that, you would have so much of a storehouse of food. You would have to figure out what to do with it. You wouldn't have a place to put it, and you would have to give it away because you didn't have room for it. Next thing you know, you're able to give out more food than you ever thought possible. And right now, I'm
Mm-hmm.
simply talking about food. What
Mm-hmm.
happens if, all right, so let's carry that on. What happens if 3 weeks out of the month, everybody brought a little extra food? Well, we got all this storehouse of food now. Now our storehouse is full for anybody who needs it, that's either a member or somebody who's in our community that needs it. We're access to help. So now on the fourth Sunday of every month, I want everybody to go out and we're going to buy a pair of jeans and a t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't have to be something super expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And now everybody's showing up every fourth Sunday with a pair of jeans and a t-shirt. And you can even say, hey guys, we got plenty of size 30 and 31s and 32s, and maybe we need some 36 waist jeans, and maybe we need some we got plenty of medium and large and extra large. We need some smalls, and we need some 2 and 3X stuff, for some of the larger folks. And
Mm-hmm.
you
Well, let
see
me
how
tell you
quickly
something. Yeah,
you see
I
how
do.
quickly that grows with one shirt. You
It
see how
it really
quick
does. And that was the basis for us doing the blessing box. And honestly, I don't want people that are listening to us to think that we're just sitting here trashing churches, because I'm gonna tell you, there's some really good churches that are doing it the right way. And I was
absolutely.
I was part of two of those churches. And one of them had a clothing closet that people made donations all the time to. And multiple times a week, people could come in and go shopping in the clothing closet and get what they needed for their family, for their kids. We had a lot of the folks that are doing foster care and taking care of kids and stuff. A lot of those folks visited, and it was an absolute blessing to them. And that kitchen at that particular church was wide open all the time, and they were cooking for the community. They were cooking for all kinds of groups, and there's some really good churches out there. Matter of fact, there's one that's just right down the road from me that I was a member of when I was growing up, and it is literally known in this county as the church that does the stuff for the community. And it is an amazing church, and that's one of the churches that I audit as well. They're a fantastic organization, and I can't say enough good things about what they do and how they do it and how they take care of their funds. The way they're paying their staff is not exorbitant, and their building is not it's not a mega church by any means, but it's modest for what they bring in, and the rest goes to the community helping people. And they have it's rare that you don't see their name involved in just about everything that's going on in Wilson County when it comes to helping other people. Those are the kinds of folks that we need to see and use that blueprint for what they're doing. And exactly what you just said is the blueprint they used to start that up. You're 100% right with what you just said. That's literally how they started.
Well, I mean,
Now look how big it got. So,
I go so far, and you and I have had discussions like this. I go so far as to say, every time the church assembles, every time, and yes, I'm talking about Sunday morning worship, and people say,
mhm.
"Oh, I don't," and those people, and okay, I don't understand how you could do that, and I don't understand why you would want to do that. And okay,
Yeah.
you're already displaying to me that you don't have the mindset or the heart set of Christ. And now I'm already starting to question your commitment to the Christianity you say you represent already,
Mhm.
because you're already coming up with excuses on why God won't supply all my needs through his riches in Christ Jesus. You're literally making
Mhm.
that argument in front of me, and I'm like going, you do realize I'm a pastor, and I kind of take this seriously, and I believe that if we endeavor to fulfill the mission he's given us, that he will equip us for this mission, right?
Yeah, he will.
I do believe that. Well, I said that to say this. I'm one of these people that believe that every time we get together and we walk through those doors to worship collectively as the church, that we should be feeding each other.
Mhm.
Not simply spiritual food was in the word, but we should actually have, and I belong to several different churches. I've attended several different churches throughout my
Mhm.
life, and I've had the benefit of seeing sort of both sides. And I had a church that spent a good money. They saved up money. They made a really nice fellowship hall in addition to the sanctuary,
Mhm.
and the fellowship hall was fitted very well, and it had commercial coffee makers and things like that.
Mhm.
And on Sunday mornings when you arrived for church, they had breakfast bars, breakfast cereal bars, the little granola things and stuff like that. They had donuts, and they had fruit, bananas and apples and this, that, and the other. They had coffee, water, teas, and juices and stuff. So you could come in if you were so inclined and you're hungry. You're being fed,
Mhm.
right? And there's no restriction about bringing your beverage of choice, whether you had coffee, tea, or water, or whatever it was, soda, into the Sunday school class with you, and you sit there and you nibble and you discuss whatever lesson you're discussing that morning, and,
Mhm.
and and then from there you go into the sanctuary, and we feed you spiritually with the Word of God and the preaching.
Mhm.
Then we have communion,
Mhm. Yep.
and often here's what happened, and I've been associated with multiple different churches throughout my life that have followed this pattern. And here's always what happened: after the service, people would either have already like pre-scheduled some potluck, and somebody brought a dish or something, and people would chip in, and they would eat lunch together at the church from things people brought at home, or they wound up going in mass to some local eatery establishment, whether it be a
Mm-hmm.
cafe or whatever, and wound up getting some lunch or something together. And while there, they're still talking about all the stuff that's going on with their church. And when
Mm-hmm.
that happens, now you're impacting the other restaurant growers who are overhearing this. Inevitably, you'll find somebody who's interested that winds up joining the conversation, and the next thing you know, they've become another member of your church. And
I've
I've
seen that
watched,
happen. Yes, I've
and, and
watched
I
that happen. Yeah.
and I've watched these members who were so blessed by what's
Mm-hmm.
going on around them, that while they were at these lunches, they would look over at somebody and say, "See that table over there? Yeah, I want their bill. I want to pay their bill, and just don't tell them who paid it. Just
Yep. I've
I'm
seen
gonna pay
that.
the bill." Yeah, and so next
That's
thing you know, you've got
fantastic.
people in the restaurant that are getting their check or
Mm-hmm.
getting their bill, and they're getting this thing that says it's been paid for you. Well, and they're like, "What? Well, who paid it?" Well, we can't say.
Mm-hmm. It's pretty
And
big.
that thing starts snowballing. And when
Mm-hmm.
you're a part of a group like that, and you're known for that, because eventually you keep doing that, you're going to be known for it. You know what happens?
Other
Everybody
people
wants to be a
start.
part of a group like
Yeah,
that.
they do.
Everybody wants to be with everybody else who is constantly helping them out and loving them and
Mm-hmm.
educating them and building them up. People will flock to that if they're feeling like they're being built up, because what you're doing is
Mm-hmm.
you're showing, number one, displaying your purpose. You're
Yep.
giving them purpose. You're giving them reason. You're giving them sustenance. It's a win-win.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the funny part. Okay, this same pattern will work whether it's church or not.
You're right. In fact, remember that movie years ago that came out called Pay It Forward? That started a whole movement of people paying it forward to people. People started getting gifts of vehicles, and you drive through a drive-through window, and you go to pay your bill, and they're like, "Oh, well, the car in front of you already paid for it," and it's like, and that just started a trend, and then you started seeing that stuff popping up everywhere. People doing. In fact, I've had multiple times where I've showed up where people have paid for my meals, and I said, well, then I want to pay for that person's. And you're exactly right. It does trigger that goodness in people. If
Well,
we can find a way to,
one of the employers here in where I live,
Mhm.
is a large employer, is Tyson's Food.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
and many years ago, I worked there. Matter of fact, if you live where I live, you've probably at one time or another worked at Tyson's for a period of time, whether
Hmm.
it be a year or
Yeah.
two or whatever. Well, the interesting thing about that is Tyson's has a cafeteria inside the production facility.
Hmm.
And when no matter what shift you're on, you can go to the cafeteria and you can get a hot meal
Hmm.
at cost.
Nice.
At cost. So
Hmm.
um whatever it cost the company to produce it. And here's the thing, they're preparing Tyson's food, which they have there on site.
Hmm.
So their costs are very low. So you could go in and get breakfast, cup of coffee, a juice, and chicken and biscuits, and chicken or biscuit and gravy or whatever. And you're paying like $1.50, $2, maybe three.
That's wild. That's really good.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And or go and hot lunch lunchtime, lunchtime bell rings. You just, if you didn't bring lunch with you or you didn't want to go out, you just go to the cafeteria. I mean, the option is there if you wanted to go out somewhere. And I'm sitting there, when I worked there, I was like, why would you? Why would I get in my car,
Why would
spend
you leave? Yeah.
spend the time, spend the money in gas to drive to some other
Hmm.
place to pay for this food of the same quality that I'm going to get here for twice or more of the price that I can
Probably
get it
four or
for right
five
here?
times. Yeah.
Why would I do that? That makes no
Mhm.
financial sense. I wouldn't do that. As a matter of fact, I didn't.
Mm-mm.
And so that there's a scenario in which now you have a company that is saying, hey, we're going to feed our employees.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, they have a very high retention of employees. There are people that have worked there all their lives, got out of high
Yeah.
school and went to work there, and are still working there today, 40 years later, and then
Mm-hmm.
supervisory roles and all kinds of stuff. And they're like, this has been a great job for me, you know?
Respect for people goes a long way. It
Absolutely.
really does. Mm-hmm.
And so, but this whole thing of caring enough, loving people enough to help provide for them, that is a Christian concept, whether it's found in a business setting, or whether it's found in a social group setting, or whether it's found in literally a church setting. It's still a Christian uh, uh, um, concept, a Christian ethic.
Mm-hmm.
And the Christian ethics will work even
Mm-hmm.
outside the church. I mean, they'll work at home. They'll work anywhere else you go. Don't believe me? Do me a favor. Try it for 90 days and see if it doesn't work for you.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
Um,
You got
so
it kind of leans to that question, and you got to ask is where did we lose that? Where did we
yeah,
lose that?
and
Being
so
able
we
to care for each other and love each other. Where did we lose that along the way to the point where now we're just relying on the government for everything?
and there was
Where
there
did we
was
go wrong?
there was a pastor, and I'll say a local pastor because it's a Tennessee pastor, who made a post on social media about, well, I'm not so sure that the church has the ability to do to the extent the government
Hmm.
can. The government can do it better, and we can't. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Um, and I would like to ask that pastor: are you thinking only about your congregation, or are you thinking about all
Yeah,
of
that would be my
all of
first
Christian?
question. Yeah.
Have you stopped trying to work together with other congregations? Maybe.
Mm.
Well, my church doesn't have the capacity to store food, and we can't really do a pantry. Okay. What happens if you partner with a church that you already knows has the capacity and say, we're going
Mhm.
to still bring our stuff in, and when the service is over, I'm going to pack it up in my vehicle and I'm going to take it over to that pantry, and we're going to help
Mhm.
stock that pantry because they have space. Now you've got two church congregations feeding into one
Mhm.
pantry. And when
Yep.
people come to the church that doesn't have the physical pantry, we need some assistance. Well, you send them to the place that you're putting your stores.
Mhm.
Put all your stuff in the storehouse so that when people need, you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Doesn't matter where physical location of the storehouse is, there's no excuse for you not to put your stores in the storehouse.
Yeah,
And
you
you're
nailed it. Yep.
literally,
No matter
you're
where it is.
literally
Yep.
you're literally coming up with excuses. Well, we don't have a storehouse. If you don't have a storehouse, it's because you're not partnered with a church that does. And why?
Mhm.
Tell me why.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
we don't like them because we dunk and they sprinkle. Oh, so you're just going to
See, and
divide.
that's the point. That's
You're
what's
going to
divided us.
continue to divide you're going to continue to provide excuses. You're going to continue to do anything that you can, except literally find a way to practice what it is the Bible tells us we should do. Well, now, again, I'm starting to question your commitment to this thing called Christianity that you profess. Because God says, I want you to do this. You're like, well, I don't have room. Okay, step two, find someone that does have room and start
Mhm.
sowing seed.
Yeah, you're hitting on what I have to deal with every single day at work, every single day that we go to church. There's complaints about all the different ways and reasons why we can't do something. Have we really stopped to think of one that we can instead of stating 100 reasons why we can't? How about we focus on that positive instead of the negative? How we focus on finding one way we can as opposed to all these reasons why we can't? And
Well,
that
and
you'd be
and
so amazed at how much you can accomplish.
and I started this conversation, or earlier. I didn't start it, but earlier in the conversation, I mentioned the haves and the have-nots.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let's talk about another thing. Oddly enough, the people in this country, most of the people that are considered or would be considered or could be considered as being part of the have not crowd have more than any other poor nation in the world.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do.
I mean, we have what we need. I mean, I grew up, um, I grew up pretty, pretty poor. I had everything that I needed growing up. I did not have extra. We had no extra. I was about to make a joke because I still drink my water out of a mason jar, you know.
Nice. I love it.
Absolutely. But I mean, so we grew up, and that, you know, I don't need to drink it out of a mason jar. I just have a mason jar, so why not?
Yeah. It's
So,
tradition.
exactly, it's tradition.
That's the way we've always done it.
So, so we have this. I saw a meme, I think, that sums up what I'm trying to convey pretty concisely, and it said something like, "Only in America can somebody have the government give them food and complain and give them housing and complain on social media while using a $1,200 cell phone
Yeah.
about how underprivileged they are because the gas that they're putting in their new car is high."
Yeah.
Wait a minute, you have a
Pretty
place
sad.
to live, and you have food, and you have a cell phone, and you have a
Hmm.
vehicle, and you're complaining about how hard everything is? Really?
Yeah. Head to one of those African countries over there, and yeah, your perspective would change pretty quick.
There are countries on this planet where even people who are considered wealthy
Hmm.
don't have a car, or they have one car for their entire family.
Hmm.
And here, you almost have one car per adult in the household.
Hmm. Yeah. A driveway full of vehicles. Yet.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So, you know, perspective is very key.
Yeah.
And
That's
and,
a big
and
word for me is perspective. I've once you learn to understand perspective from other people's point of view, it really changes the whole world for you. And it also changes your perspective on the Bible and the scriptures and how it works when you take the self out of your perspective and start looking at it from
and
Jesus'
this
point of view and
this is the
others.
problem. This is the problem with modern social media. Modern social media, specifically to those people who are youth, who are young enough not to know and not young
Hmm.
enough not to recognize that social media is perspective programming.
Hmm. It really is.
They are programming you to perceive things a certain way. And a lot of times, the way that perception is false.
Hmm. Absolutely.
And you don't have the intelligence or the experience to see beyond it, and you fall for it.
Hmm. That's one of the reasons why my kid, my daughter, she still does not have a cell phone, and she ain't getting one for a few more years at least. Because, I mean, we're going to try to minimize the damage as much as we can. There's just too much out there right now, and it's too much too fast for a lot of these kids. That
Too much too
it's just.
fast is one problem. The other problem is you have a lot of kids who are not being educated and prepared, because
Hmm.
this indoctrination is very widespread. It can be found in schools. I'm not saying that every teacher in every school system is trying to somehow indoctrinate your child into some way of thinking. I'm not saying that, but it is there. If you don't think that,
It
you're
is. It
foolish.
really is. Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's everywhere. So it just happens to be kind of hyper focused when it comes to social media, because people like
Hmm.
to categorize, people like to find their group. Oh, this is my group, this is my clique, this is my whatever, insert, you know. And
Hmm.
so they try to find some place in which they can identify. And I've always been, to a degree, a social chameleon. And I don't
Hmm.
mean that in the sense that I disguise myself so that I'm not seen or known. I mean that wherever I'm at, I find that I'm comfortable.
Yeah, I get along with
You know,
everybody because I always try to find something in common as opposed to looking at differences. And
well,
it's
and I just try
so
to be
easy to
me.
get along with each other that way, and then just be yourself. I mean, it's
Yeah, I just try to be me. If you don't like who I am, that's fine. I'm not going to force myself on you. You don't have to hang around
yeah.
me. That's fine. I don't have to hang around you. I don't want to offend you, so that's fine. Um, but I'm the kind of guy that I can be just as home in a church setting, worshiping God, and at a NASCAR around
Mhm.
a bunch of what I personally will call rednecks. Let's just face it. I mean, I grew up around them, and
Bunch of rednecks drinking beers.
I'm
Yeah.
probably a little redneck. Some of it's probably rubbed off. Okay, that's fine. I'm okay in that environment. I'm not offended by their presence. I'm not offended by their actions. I'm not offended by them. They're just who they are. I'm just being me. And I could take that same thing and go to any restaurant or to any, um, you know, any concert of any genre of music, whether it be, a Dave Matthews show or a Billy String show or a, insert band or insert style here. I don't care if it's country or R&B or metal or whatever.
Mhm.
I could go and I can, oh, cool, not interesting show, cool show. I mean, dig the show and be around anybody, whether any color, any size, any creed, it doesn't matter. I'm here. I'm fine. Hey, let's all have a blast together. Um,
Mhm.
and it's just weird that um it's almost like this whole social clique thing, this whole social group thing that I mentioned. It's like we get mad. We all understand how wrong the uh, ideas of segregation were. Okay, leaving slavery out of the equation. Let's just eliminate that from the equation for this topic, and let's just talk about segregation for segregation's sake. Um, the whites only bathrooms and all this, that, and the other.
Mhm. Yeah.
The other side of the tracks and blah blah blah.
Mhm.
We all understand how inherently wrong that is, and
Mhm.
yet somehow in the conscious collective, we seek out cliques of groups that are different where we fit in, and we isolate ourselves. The
Mhm.
goths don't mix with the nerds, and the nerds don't mix with the. And we even do it by we do it by
Yeah.
generation. Well, the Gen X's are
Mhm.
crazy, and the Gen Zs, and
We divide us up every which way you can divide it. We divide ourselves up all the
yeah.
time, and I
And so
think that
all
right
that
there is
is,
what has led to every bit of this. The
and all that
government
is
social
social
programs.
new
Yeah.
forms of social segregation that we constantly buy.
Mhm.
Libs versus Democrats and Republicans, and libs versus conservatives, and blah blah blah. And we don't talk to them because they're on the wrong side of the track or the wrong side of what. Yeah. And all it is, it's a new form of practicing segregation, and nobody wants to admit that that's the truth. Nobody wants. Oh, I'm not part of that. Oh, yes, you are. Yes, you
Mhm.
are. You
It
won't
is.
even
Yes,
admit
you
it.
are. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You won't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I keep going back to a church member that I had, and our church was predominantly white, and we had one African American family that came there, and she brought all her sisters with her and her family on a regular basis. And she said to me one time, she said, "You know, John, what I don't understand." And I said, "What's that, Miss Phyllis?" And she says, "Black churches." I said, "What? What do you mean?" And she said, "Oh, and white churches too. I just don't believe in that. I just don't believe that should even be a thing." She said, "As soon as I started going to this church, I heard so many people ask me, 'Why in the world you go to that white church? Why don't you go to a black church with us?'" And she said, "I tell every one of them, it ain't a black church and it ain't a white church. It's Jesus's church. We're
Amen.
all
Yeah.
his people. We're all the church. There's no such thing." And in her mind, there was no such thing. And that really, man, that made every bit of every difference in my perspective on looking at the church. And then it really opened my eyes to how many ways we divide ourselves. It's not just by race, it's all the other things you mentioned as well.
See, in my mind, there's only the only true forms of segregation that should ever exist. And this is going to be a controversial statement, I'm sure. What he just said, there should be forms of segregation that exist. Yes, and here they are: true and false, right and wrong.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And that's it. Off the top of my
Interesting.
head, that's it.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, we should separate truth from fiction, truth from false. We should separate that, and we should separate right from wrong.
And the
And the
biggest
problem,
way.
The
The
problem
biggest
we
problem
have,
with that is perspective.
here's the problem. Okay. Let's talk about the right from wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is the question inherently that will always be asked. Well, who determines what's right and what's wrong? Here you go. How about letting God do it
Yeah.
and take man out of the equation?
Yeah. Yep.
How about that? That just takes
Mhm.
every man's opinion off the table. Let
Mhm.
God do it.
It does.
Well, I don't believe in God. Well, he believes in you.
That's where their perspective is what's going to drive what's true and what's false, what's right and what's wrong.
Right.
That comes, yeah.
There
We could
was
do a whole show on that.
well, I mean, it all boils down to this. There's this thing that I heard, and I still remember. I was like 15 or 16 when I heard it, and I still remember when I heard it. It was so profound; it has never left me. And it is, knowledge is but a single point, and the ignorant will multiply it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Interesting.
that's an example of it
Yeah.
right there. Knowledge is but a single point, and the ignorant will multiply it. And
Yep.
so it's just a matter, well, I think we're digressing. I'm getting off topic, but I mean, but it's the conversation tree. It's going to branch, and I get
It
that.
is, yeah.
But going back to this thing, I do realize that this is a Christian podcast, and I do realize that most people who are listening to this are Christian people. Most of the people, I mean, I don't have a lot of non-Christians that are listening to this podcast. I wish that was different, but hey, I'm still going to do it, and whoever listens, and I'm grateful to everyone who does. But if you're a Christian and you claim to be a Christian, or you want to be a Christian, or you're just simply curious and trying to figure out what this Christianity is all about, and you stumbled on this podcast, ask yourself, what can I do to be a part of the solution and not a part of the problem or the symptom? Because I hear the symptom part's often left out of that. People say, well, you're either part of the problem or you're part of the solution. Well, no, you can be part of the symptom. And so, because you wouldn't have government assistance at all if they didn't have the symptom of perceived need. So how do we
use the right word there too? Perceived need.
How do
a lot of times we perceive that we have a need when it's not a need.
A lot of times people are told.
Yeah.
You'd be shocked how many times people are told,
here's what you need.
We need to help you because you're less than. You need a helping hand. You can't do it on your own.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't do it on my own. No, you can't do it on your own because of insert problem here.
Yeah, I hear that. I've heard that a lot.
And then what happens is you buy that mess. You buy it. Instead of saying, you know what? You are capable of literally doing anything that you put your mind to. You are. You're capable of it. It may not come as easy to you as it might to some, depending on your circumstances, but that doesn't mean you can't still achieve it. You may have to figure out how to achieve it. You know what I'm saying? For instance, a friend of mine, I have a friend of mine who is has in an accident, he lost both of his legs below the knee. One of them he actually lost almost just below the hip, and the other one below the knee. And he drives a car. A lot of people say, well, how can he hit the accelerator? Well, he had to come up with a way, or find somebody else who came up with a way to have a accelerator that's steering wheel mounted. And he does. It's a little.
I've seen those little.
I'll call it I was going to say a trigger mechanism, but yeah, it's a paddle. It's basically a paddle, and you just pull the paddle, and it's the same as putting a foot on the gas. And he's got one for acceleration and one for braking. And so because of that, he doesn't need his feet to accelerate or brake. And so he can drive the car perfectly fine. I mean, his eyesight's good, his hearing's good, everything else is good. So yeah, he can. And what amazes me is his ability to get into the vehicle and out of the vehicle without assistance from another human being, because he's got this little chair hoist thing that, he hooks the the chair hoist up, and it picks him and his chair up, and it pulls it inside the van. The van door shuts, and then he moves forward into the driver's position, and it locks his chair into place. And I'm like, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. You know, I'm just lazy enough to almost kind of want one of those for myself.
I know. What that's exactly what I was sitting here thinking. I was sitting here thinking, man, that'd be kind of nice to have, actually.
Yeah.
There's a selfishness coming out of me, man. I want that. I want to take guys.
But
Nice.
yeah, I mean, we have to find a way. And what I was about to say is, I urge you, if you're a Christian and a member of a local church in your community, and you hear this podcast and you hear some of the stuff that we're talking about as far as bringing in food to the storehouse and finding a storehouse, if your place doesn't have the space or room to partner with another church or 2 or 3, bring this up. Bring this up in your local congregation. Start being the Christian solution. Start being Christ in the world.
Yes.
Be a fitting ambassador of the kingdom of heaven, and show that, no, God said he would supply all our needs, and I trust him enough to give, because I believe that my needs are going to be supplied, and I can give from the abundance. And here's the thing. This is, don't take my word for it. This is his words, because this is biblical. To he who is faithful in a little, much shall be given. I'm paraphrasing. I'm not saying the direct quote here. Scripture according to Randy. And I promise you that if you're consistent and faithful in giving a little, you'll wind up with more abundance.
I can attest to that 100%. You do the right thing, God's going to trust you with more.
And if all the now get this, for all you and for all everybody listening, if we were to do this and our overflow and abundance increase, so that we could then do more and more and more, how possibly would the government ever be able to match that? Because we have the security of God himself, and a promise from God himself that if we are simply faithful enough to put forth the effort, that he'll be the one to make the abundance happen, not us.
Yep. God's way more efficient than any of us, including the government. You can't
outgive God.
Nope, can't do it.
I was just and this is going to be a weird way to make my final case here. Last night, my son, my wife, and I, we watched the Fantastic Four movie. And spoiler alert, if you're hearing this podcast and you haven't seen the movie or don't know the premise of the movie or whatever, spoiler alert, it's coming. But in this movie, the Reed Richards and Sue Richards, the two of the Fantastic Four, they have a son. And this Galactus wants their son. And the whole premise around them and the fight against Galactus is that they are not going to give up their child. And then as I'm watching that, I'm literally in the back of my mind going, you can't outgive God. Because God gave his. And then I started thinking about how this movie is the human side of that argument, and the Bible is the divine side of that story. We don't want to give up ours, but he said, hey, I'll give up mine because I love you that much. But anyway. Well, hope we made a dent. I hope we had a good conversation here. We thank you. Yeah, we thank you for listening to us. If you have a topic that you want to hear discussed on the Forge, or something you want us to hammer out, hey, write to us. We love to hear from everybody who listens. And you can reach us by writing to onekingsforge@gmail.com. That's the number 1, kingsforge@gmail.com. And if you want to know more about us, or you just heard this podcast for the first time and You want more information, you can find it at thekingsforge.org. Thank you very much for tuning in today to the Sharpening Iron podcast. I'm Randy, and I think I can speak for John when I say we want you happy, we want you blessed, and we want you here in the King's Forge.